The night Elena Voss lost everything, the moon was full and bright, as if it wanted to witness her fall. She stood in the center of the Crimson Moon Pack's great hall, surrounded by wolves she had once called family. Her husband, Alpha King Damien Cross, stood a few steps away, his jaw tight and his eyes cold. Beside him, his sister Vivian wore a small, satisfied smile that no one else seemed to notice. "You betrayed this pack," Damien said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You betrayed me." Elena shook her head, her hands trembling. "Damien, please. I didn't do what she says I did. You have to believe me." But he didn't. He had already decided, long before she stepped into that hall. The evidence Vivian had shown him, forged letters, a stolen seal, whispered lies from pack members loyal to her, had been enough. 2 years of marriage, 2 years of trust, erased in a single evening. "You are no longer my Luna," Damien said. "You are no longer welcome in this pack." The words landed like physical blows. Elena felt the bond between them, the one that had connected her heart to his since the day they mated, begin to tear. It was a pain unlike anything she had known, a ripping sensation deep in her chest, as the pack elders performed the ceremony that stripped her rank and broke the mate bond in front of everyone. She did not beg again. She would not give Vivian the satisfaction. 2 guards escorted her to the pack's border and left her there, in the cold forest, with nothing but the thin dress she wore. She stood alone as the sound of the pack's howls faded behind her, marking the end of her old life. What no one knew, not Damien, not Vivian, not even Elena herself until weeks later, was that she was carrying his children. She wandered for 2 days, weak and injured from the harsh trek through unfamiliar territory. Her wolf was too exhausted to shift and run properly, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. On the 3rd day she collapsed near a stream, certain that this was where her story would end. Instead, it was where a new one began. Queen Selene Nightshade found her. The elderly ruler of the Obsidian Court, the Crimson Moon Pack's oldest rival, had been out walking her territory alone, something her guards always scolded her for. She found Elena half-conscious by the water, her lips pale, her breathing shallow. Selene could have left her there. The 2 territories had a long history of distrust, decades of border disputes and quiet hostility. A wolf from the Crimson Moon Pack, found weak and helpless, was exactly the kind of opportunity a ruthless queen might exploit. But something in Elena's face, even unconscious, stopped her. Perhaps it was the exhaustion mixed with quiet defiance, the way her jaw was set even in sleep, as though she refused to give up no matter what had been done to her. Selene knelt beside her, and, against the advice she would have given anyone else, carried her back to the Obsidian Court herself. Elena woke 3 days later in a soft bed, in a room she did not recognize, with an old woman sitting in a chair beside her. "You are safe," Selene said simply. "You are also, I believe, carrying a child, perhaps 2. Elena's hand flew to her stomach. She had suspected, in the back of her mind, but hearing it confirmed, changed everything. These children were the last piece of her old life, the only part of her bond with Damien that remained, and now they were hers alone to protect. "Why did you help me?" Elena asked, her voice hoarse. Selene considered the question for a long moment. "Because you looked like someone who has been wronged, not someone who deserved wrong. And because, if I am being honest, I have watched Damien Cross grow arrogant these past years. It pleases me to see his mistakes catch up to him." Elena did not correct her about the reason. She simply nodded, too tired and too grateful to ask for more. Over the following months, Elena remained within the Obsidian Court, hidden from outside knowledge. Selene, who had no children of her own, and no clear heir to her throne, began to spend more time with her. She was struck by Elena's sharp mind, her ability to read people, and the steady calm she carried even in her lowest moments. Where other wolves in the court flattered Selene or feared her, Elena spoke to her honestly, sometimes disagreeing with her decisions, always with respect. "You would make a fine leader," Selene told her one evening, watching Elena organize supply reports with more efficiency than half of her actual advisors. Elena laughed softly. "I was a Luna once. Look how that turned out." "You were a Luna to a foolish king," Selene said. "That is not the same as being unfit to lead." It only means you were given to the wrong pack. Elena gave birth in the depths of winter, in a private chamber, attended only by Celine's most trusted healer. Twins, a boy and a girl, both with her eyes but their father's dark hair. She named them Kai and Ren, and she held them through the night, weeping quietly, grieving for a life that could have been different, while feeling fierce love for the life she now had to build. Celine visited the next morning and looked down at the twins with an unreadable expression. "Crimson moon blood," she murmured. "Royal blood, unless I am mistaken." Elena tensed. "Please, if anyone learns whose children these are, no one will learn anything from me," Celine said firmly. "But understand, Elena, what you carry in these children is not just family. It is leverage, history, and possibly the future of two territories. You must decide, in time, what you wish to do with that." For the next 3 years, Elena did not decide right away. She focused instead on healing, on raising her children in secret, and on learning everything Celine had to teach her about leading a pack: strategy, diplomacy, the delicate balance between strength and mercy. She trained her body as hard as her mind, determined never again to be as powerless as she had been the night she was cast out. Celine's health began to decline during the 3rd winter. She called Elena to her chambers one evening, her voice weaker than Elena had ever heard it. "I have watched you become someone I would trust with everything I have built," Celine said. "I have no children, and no other soul in this court deserves the throne as you do. I want you to succeed me." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I am not born of this territory. Others will resist. Others will learn to respect strength, as they always have," Celine said. "You have earned this, Elena, not because I gave it to you, but because of who you became while no one was watching." Celine passed peacefully 2 weeks later. True to her word, and after a period of careful maneuvering and alliance building that tested every skill Elena had learned, the Obsidian Court accepted her as their new ruler. She took the name Queen Elena Nightshade, honoring the woman who had saved her life and reshaped her future. Meanwhile, 3 years had not been kind to the Crimson Moon Pack. Without a true Luna bonded to the land, the pack's territory had grown weaker. Crops failed more often than they should have. Younger wolves left to join stronger packs. Alliances that Damien had once taken for granted grew thin and uncertain. And slowly, painfully, the truth about Elena's banishment began to surface. A pack member, who had once supported Vivienne, racked with guilt, confessed what he knew. The letters had been forged. The seal had been planted. Elena had never betrayed anyone. By the time Damien learned the truth, it was far too late to undo what had been done. He exiled his own sister, in a fury that satisfied no one, least of all himself. He searched for Elena for months, sending trackers across every territory he could think of, but she had vanished so completely that most assumed she was dead. The truth reached him at last through an unlikely source: a formal letter from the Obsidian Court, requesting a treaty summit to address the escalating tension along their shared border, tension that threatened to erupt into open conflict if left unresolved. The letter was signed by Queen Elena Nightshade. Damien stared at the name for a long time before he understood. He arrived at the neutral grounds on the appointed night, hours before the summit was set to begin, unable to sleep and unwilling to wait. Guards from the Obsidian Court intercepted him at the border, informing him that the Queen would not receive anyone before dawn, as was the custom for treaty negotiations. He waited anyway, pacing beneath the trees, as the stars slowly faded and the sky began to lighten. And then he saw her. Elena walked toward the meeting grounds flanked by 2 guards, dressed in the deep colors of the Obsidian Court, her posture straight and commanding, in a way he had never seen from her before. For a moment, he could not speak. She was the same woman he remembered, and yet entirely transformed, carrying herself like someone who had never once doubted her own worth. "Elena," he said, his voice breaking on her name. She stopped several feet away, studying him with an expression he could not read. "Alpha Cross, you are early." "Elena, please. I need to explain. I need you to know how sorry I am." "I know everything already," she said calmly. "The forged letters, Vivienne's plotting. Your decision to believe lies over the word of your own mate." I have had 3 years to learn the truth from people far more honest than you were that night." He flinched at the accusation, deserved as it was. "I was wrong. I have never stopped regretting it. If I could take back that night." "You cannot," Elena said simply. "And I did not come here for apologies, Damien. I came because our territories are on the edge of war, and I intend to prevent it, not because of what we once were to each other, but because it is my duty as queen." She gestured for him to walk with her toward the meeting grounds, and after a moment, he did, struggling to reconcile the composed ruler beside him with the broken woman he had left in the forest 3 years earlier. "I have something else to tell you," Elena said quietly, as the first true light of dawn broke over the horizon. "Something you should have known long ago." She raised a hand, and from behind a cluster of trees, 2 young wolves stepped forward, their dark hair unmistakable, their eyes exactly like his own. Damien's breath caught in his throat. "Twins," Elena said, "Kai and Ren. Yours and mine, born 5 months after you banished me." Damien sank to his knees, overwhelmed, staring at the children he had never known existed, children who watched him with cautious curiosity rather than recognition. 3 years of pain, regret, and searching crashed over him at once. "I am not telling you this so that we can return to what we were," Elena said, her voice steady despite the emotion clearly beneath it. "That path is closed, but they deserve to know where they come from, in time, on their own terms. And you deserve to know the truth, even if it changes nothing between us. Elena, is there truly no chance?" "There is a treaty to sign," she said gently but firmly, cutting off the question before it could fully form. "Our kingdoms depend on it. Let us begin there." As the sun rose fully over the neutral grounds, Queen Elena Nightshade and Alpha King Damien Cross sat across from one another, not as former mates bound by love, but as 2 rulers bound by duty, history, and the quiet, unspoken presence of the children who now stood between their 2 worlds. The treaty they signed that morning would bring peace to both territories, ending years of tension and rebuilding what pride and deception had broken. But it was clear to everyone present, including Damien himself, that this was not an ending. It was merely the beginning of a much longer reckoning, one that would unfold slowly, on Elena's terms, in her own time. She had returned not as the woman he had cast aside, but as a queen who no longer needed his kingdom, his name, or his forgiveness, to know her own worth. And for the first time since that terrible night 3 years ago, Elena felt something close to peace, walking forward into a future she alone had built, with her children beside her, and the dawn breaking clear and bright above them all.